this bishop kind of knew something was going to happen to him.
I was extremely excited when I heard that I have 2 weeks to live, because I don't want to stay in this world. For me, it's over. And I pray that the Lord takes me today before tomorrow. I want to be with him.
Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I'm dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this episode, we're going to take a deep look into the disturbing news we're hearing coming out of Australia. First of all, they experienced some tragedy when 6 women were killed in a mall with a person with mental illness who stabbed them to death. And now we hear reports of a bishop who was also stabbed by a Muslim attacker, and a few of his parishioners were also harmed as well. So what does it mean to be a Christian in the modern world? Well, it requires us to be a martyr. But before we jump into our discussion on faith, culture, and commentary, I'd like to thank you for subscribing. If you haven't done so, please click subscribe, like, share, and leave your comments. You have no idea, but that does so much to help us in our efforts to provide good information, not to divide us, but to bring us closer to Jesus and with a pastoral perspective. And also, please consider making a $5 supporting gift every month on our Patreon community, because that really does help us to provide you with this information and to keep our staff working. But also, it gives you a chance to get access to some pretty great informative content, as well as some special perks. But now let's jump right into it with our discussion on faith and what it means to be a Christian/martyr in this modern world. We know that Christianity and Christians have been persecuted ever since Jesus Christ walked the face of the earth. He himself was a true victim, which means that he wasn't just someone who was easily triggered because someone called him a different name or a different pronoun. No, he was 100% innocent and he was killed. That's what it means to be a true victim, is someone who doesn't deserve maltreatment, but they experience it because of truth, because of what they believe. And our modern world should be better at stopping to victimize people. And our modern world should be developing a generation of people who are not easily victimized. But unfortunately, as long as evil is in the world, and it is, Christians will always be under attack. And in particular, Catholicism is under attack, simply by fact that we are an ancient church rooted in the true teachings of Jesus Christ. Even non-Catholic Christians will attack us as Catholics. But let's just admit something. If you've ever traveled outside of America or traveled into a country that is not Christian, it doesn't matter what denomination you are. Whether you're a Protestant, whether you're a Catholic, whether you're a fundamentalist, whether you're an Eastern Orthodox or a Coptic, a different rite altogether, Christian is Christian. That's what's unique about the Holy Land. It's that in the Christian quarter, all the people who profess faith in Jesus Christ are all lumped together, and kind of as it should be to a degree. Obviously, the denominational differences create tensions, but ultimately, Christians as a whole are being attacked now more than ever. For the first 300 years of Christianity, it was called the Age of Martyrdom. But there are actually more Christians being persecuted for their faith in this century alone than in the first 300 years of Christianity. So, for example, in 2015, 21 Coptic Christians, that is, 20 Egyptians and 1 Ghanaian, they were all lined up on February the 15th, 2015, in orange jumpsuits. That image is striking. They were all killed for their faith. One of them wasn't a Christian, but became a Christian after seeing the witness of them. We also know that, and this comes from called the Open Doors group. There's a watch list that basically talks about how it is almost dangerous to pray. Check out this little video on hearing where Christians are being persecuted.
Could praying put you in danger? Could going to church risk your life? Could following Jesus cost you your job, your home, or your family? Around the world today, our Christian brothers and sisters are counting the cost of their faith. And these are the 10 countries where the price of following Jesus is highest. Number 10, Afghanistan.
I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will say that it's all generally in Africa or in the Middle East area. And it is very sad that there are people who are experiencing what we call persecution to the point of being true red martyrs. So we have different type of martyrdoms. I'm going to explain it to you very briefly. A white martyrdom is someone who is pure, that they've given their whole life in purity, and they die, and they're willing to, give up all things in order to not offend God with any type of impurity. So that's a white martyr. A red martyr is someone who's willing to shed their blood. Interestingly enough, Maximilian Kolbe, who is the Catholic priest who's a martyr who died in Auschwitz. I was just in Poland, so it's very fresh in my mind. It was said that he was given a crown to choose from the Blessed Mother at a young age. He could either live a life of purity and become a white martyr, or he could put on a crown of thorns and be a martyr for the faith by shedding his blood. And of course, him being such a holy man, as even a holy child, he said, I choose both. So pretty powerful stuff. But there's also what I would call a blue martyrdom in today's age, where people might not kill you, but they will try to destroy your reputation, or they will cancel you from society, whether it be by shaming you, taking away your job, or even your ability to live a functional life. I mean, we know that there are people who are being persecuted for their faith. And that happens more than you can even imagine. In fact, that same group tells us that there are 365 million Christians who suffer high levels of persecution and discrimination for their faith. But in America, in Western countries, Canada and Australia, let's admit, Christians are being persecuted. The number of churches that have been burned down, but somehow no one's allowed to talk about these things. This happens. And let me tell you, I get people coming at me and saying, oh, but Christians persecuted other people too. What about the Crusades, Father Leo? Well, what about it? Let's remember that the church is known as church suffering. That means the church that is constantly persecuted. And it requires us to raise up a church militancy, people who are willing to defend the Catholic Church. That's what the Crusades were all about. The Crusades were about defending Christendom, about reclaiming the lands that were stolen and protecting the Christians who lived in it, particularly from Muslim invaders. But then that will lead to hopefully the church triumphant, where the church members who struggled, who experienced persecution, but were willing to quote unquote fight for their faith, many of them died for their faith, they will experience heaven, where we know it as church triumphant. So I want to jump into now a little bit more about what happened in Australia. Again, our hearts and our prayers goes out to the 6 young women. They're praying for the repose of their soul, who were killed by a knife attacker who was wielding a knife. And trust me, had this been a gun, we would have been hearing about it constantly, about banning guns. Are we going to ban knives now? No, what we need to ban is evil, because evil is not just in the streets. It has actually entered into our churches. Here's my comments about faith, culture, and martyrdom. As I mentioned, there is evil in the world. And in that shopping mall, those young women experienced evil. I pray for the repose of their soul as well as their families, because they are mourning the loss of just innocent lives, so to speak. That was caused, they say, because of mental illness. But something happened just a few days later. A bishop, his name is Mar Mari Emmanuel, born as Robert Schlimon, and he was born in 1970. And crazy enough, I'm actually older than him by a couple months. He's a Christian cleric who was recently ordained a bishop for the Christ the Good Shepherd Church in Wakeley, New South Wales, Australia. He was ordained a bishop in 2011 for the Ancient Church of the East, but in 2015, he established an independent church in the Eastern Syriac tradition. So in a way, he's already an outlier because he does things differently. And I will say, because he shows up on my For You pages on social media, he is an outspoken critic against all things deceptive, including the woke mentality, gender confusion, anyone who wants to corrupt morality. So he's truly an outspoken critic of all things that are contrary to Jesus Christ. And he has a following. I mean, he's very charismatic. He doesn't mince his words. And he is outspoken against some of the what I would call the inconsistencies of how Muslims call their religion of Islam peaceful, but they are truly provokers of and instigators of a lot of evil. Yeah, a lot of people are going to say there's a lot of peaceful Muslims in the world, but 25% of so many billions of Muslims claim to be jihadist. They claim to want to conquer the world and to kill infidels. And they want to convert all people to become Muslims. This is 25% of billion Muslims. I can't remember the exact number. But if you take 25% of that, that is millions of people who want to harm Christians, non-religious people, people who don't agree with them. They want to force everyone to have Sharia law. They want to put women in hijabs and just cover only their whole bodies except for their eyes. You can see this wouldn't be consistent with the principles of the one true loving God. And so this Bishop Mar Mari Emmanuel, he has spoken very much out against it. And what I want to do is I want to show you the incident that happened. And I want to just give you fair warning now. This is very disturbing. The version that I'm going to show you is going to be blurred out to some degree. But if you are squeamish and sensitive, please look away now. But this is the actual video of the attack that happened, because he actually puts all of his sermons and his sacred liturgy and his prayers on social media. So he has a following, so he's already a big target, but this is even more disturbing. Okay, again, I show that to you not to be in any way salacious or promoting violence. I'm showing it to you because that's what people saw. It was absolutely terrifying and disgusting and definitely evil. What we don't fully understand, as much as we can say, is that we don't know much about the attacker's motives. However, could this man have experienced some sort of mental illness? Perhaps. But why was he even in that church in the first place? Targeting him specifically, this bishop. Is it because this bishop is outspoken? Was he a member of this church? These are things that we're not getting a lot of information about. But there is something incredibly strange about what happened, because when they finally caught the person, there was some real indicators that suggested that this was someone who was Muslim attacking a Christian. Now, again, I want you to know that I'm not showing this to you to make anyone mad, but to kind of show you the ugly reality and also the callousness that is developing in our world against the dignity of human life. So here is again, a Muslim immigrant. This is coming from X, a Muslim immigrant who stabbed a priest and 4 other churchgoers during a sermon in Australia. Actually, it wasn't a sermon, it was during the Divine Liturgy. And again, this is going to be disturbing, and please, we'll do what we can to mute out some of the cursing.
Yeah, what? People are praying you're going to come and do this?
Don't.
You're going to do this?
Just let go. Just go, please. You're going to make it worse.
No.
Oh, can I get up here, bro?
Someone who's a bishop. You're a fucking idiot. Idiot. You're gonna copy. You're an idiot. You're gonna get it.
Yeah,
He's a idiot.
It's that, I guess it's that smirk that is just so disturbing to me, because it's almost as if someone takes pleasure in wanting to harm a Christian bishop. But what's interesting about this is that this bishop kind of knew that prophetically something was going to happen to him. Here's actually a little video of a sermon that he gave before his attack. I don't exactly know when this was given, but this was something that he delivered almost as a prophecy or a prophetic knowledge that his words, which are truly challenging to this modern evil world, is actually having such great effect that people warned him about his death. Check this out.
There has been a video circulating in TikTok and I don't know where else saying that the bishop has 2 weeks to live. Yeah. And somebody's saying, farewell, Bishop, and we're really sad to see you go. Look, I was extremely excited when I heard that I have 2 weeks to live, because I don't want to stay in this world. For me, it's over. Whether I stay or not, it doesn't matter really. I've had my share of this world, and I pray that the Lord takes me today before tomorrow. I want to be with Him. This is not running away. This is not an escape. No, I'm saying it with confidence in the Lord Jesus. I love you, Lord, and I choose you any time of the day, all day long, to be with you. I don't care about the world and whatever the world gives.
That is truly a strong set of words, and it's something that we all, as Catholics, as Christians, what we should aspire to believe, that you can take all this world wants to give to us, fine. Guess what? We can't take it to heaven. We have to realize that the world wants you to think that living here in this world is the most important thing, the most necessary way to live our life. But that's not how Christians live. Christians live knowing that this world is a gift from God. It's our job to master and to care for what He has created. But this is not our eternal home. Heaven is. And this bishop knew that. What's kind of also interesting is that this attacker, apparently, from what people say, the knife that he used, the switchblade itself, malfunctioned, and so he was bludgeoning perhaps the bishop, but not actually stabbing him. And this is a great picture from X, again, that just show the real difference here. It's almost the cross versus the switchblade, and how the bishop is holding up the cross to protect him. And it's almost as if you were to take a deep look at this, many people have commented, because, man, they get into this stuff, how the switchblade malfunctioned. Could this have been a miracle? Well, in a way. Again, there's another screenshot. This is a little bit more detailed, that kind of shows at one point, the attacker looks at his knife and realizes that something was wrong, and it kind of switches. Now, unfortunately, the knife does open. The bishop does get attacked, as well as a few other people who are trying to protect the bishop. This is just disturbing stuff. And I'm not showing any of these images to you to disturb you or to take away your peace, but literally to scare the heaven into us, to help us realize that any one of us can get attacked for our faith, whether you know it or not. I'm going to show you an example of this, because this is very disturbing. How there was a woman who was trying to protect a statue from getting torn down. Do you remember in 2020 when we were all supposed to lock down, but yet there were mobs gathered around statues of St. Christopher Columbus, which happened in Baltimore, and they tore that down because somehow Christopher Columbus was seen as a colonizer, which is a real revisionist understanding of history. Maybe we can talk about that on another episode. But I remember statues of Junipero Serra were being attacked as well. And what's sad is that it took the bravery of some people to actually stand against these attackers who want to tear down not only Christian symbols, but the Christian faith. And yeah, Christians themselves. Check out this disturbing video of how every one of us are called to be martyrs right here and right now. That is disturbing. It's a Catholic woman defending a monument that pays homage to Father Antonio Alcalde, who was a religious founder of the University of Guadalajara. So this is a priest who helped found a university. And this is a group of anti-women, also known as modern feminists, who were basically calling this woman terrible names. And if you notice, some of them were dressed in burqas, or at least in black bloc clothing. Some were trying to cover their faces. Some of them were almost proud to show their faces, that they just hate Christianity. And then there was a guy that was standing there just doing absolutely nothing, possibly thinking he is really supporting women by actually degrading this woman. You can't make this stuff up. But this is what evil does. It makes good things look bad and makes bad things look good. Which is why now I want to kind of jump into my commentary on what we need to do to help us understand how to be an effective Christian and martyr in the modern world. We got to remember that being a Christian basically turns us into a target. Every time we carry the cross or even make the sign of the cross, we turn ourselves into a target. That's just a reality. I remember when I was a young priest, I was walking in New York City with my collar on because I had some work in Manhattan, and a woman came right up to me and she spat at me. She just spat at me because this was coming out, this was when the news of the clergy abuse scandal came out, early in the year 2000s, and even back in the late 90s when I was a seminarian, we were instructed about all of these, clergy abuse, child protection policies, things that I completely agree with, and things that I follow and implement in my daily life, trying to protect all people, especially the most vulnerable. But as I was walking through New York City, this woman just came right up to me and she spat right at me. Just spat at me. Just because I was wearing the clerics. I mean, even now as a Catholic priest and someone who has a little bit of a public ministry, I get attacked quite a bit verbally, behind my back, but definitely in my ear view, in my earshot. I can hear people say stuff. I could read things online, people's comments that they have, and there are going to even just be people who will want to tear down priests and anyone who is trying to uphold the gospel. The more effective you are, the more the devil wants to attack. But we have to remember that as much as we need to become the church militant, it's not about fighting wars with swords and axes and, with putting on like armor and stuff like that. Because the armor of faith is actually virtue. And our weapon is the Word of God. Our strength is our devotion. And our sacraments are our consolation. We have to remember that we cannot fight injustice with injustice. And so this kind of happened immediately after the attack. You'll hear how there are like 5,000 supporters throwing stones and projectiles at the police, demanding that the assailant be handed over to face the crowd of justice. The last thing we want to do is to scream out, we want justice, but we want to do it unjustly. Very sad, but this is what happens when our passions, when our emotions are unchecked. It's very disturbing. This one act should not lead to chaos. Our response should not be hatred and anger at the police, although the police need to have a reality check and be purified themselves, because some of them actually perpetuate injustice. As there are bad everybodies, there might be bad cops. But to have a group of people try to respond so angrily, we can understand where people's emotions are going to get the best of them. But that's where a show like this is trying to tell you, don't be upset. The first thing that we need to do is pray. Really. I mean, I know that sounds like, come on, Father Leo, you're just saying it because you're a priest. No, I'm saying it because it's true. Prayer must be our first response. Then a true investigation as to what happened, and be transparent. Let's not cover this up. I mean, oh my gosh, the amount of press would happen if anyone even calls someone by a different pronoun, or if someone says something about a candidate that you like, something negative about a candidate that you like, I mean, you can consider that hate speech. And that person who made those remarks could go to jail. I mean, and it would be all over the news. No doubt. It would be all over the news. But this was an attack on a Christian. And I don't see much in the news at all. This was a cleric, a bishop for his congregation, stabbed. This made such little news. And we hear so little about the motivation of the killer. Why? Might it be because this, unfortunately, is now politicized too? So again, turn to prayer first, and then let's have a transparent investigation. But 3, let's be smart about this as well. Churches need to pay attention. They need to set up security cameras. They need to set up they really need to step up their security. When I was working in parishes, we had to tell the ushers that you're not there just to greet people and to hand out bulletins or to seat them. No. Your job is to protect the church, to be the eyes and ears, so to speak. There are some, if you go to the Holy Land, for example, before a Jew can go to the Temple Mount, or if a Muslim wants to go to the Wailing Wall, or if a Muslim wants to pray at the Dome of the Rock, there is high-level security to get into these holy sites. We're talking, like frisking when necessary, definitely metal detectors. And you're going to be greeted with guards with machine guns. You can't pray unless you get past these guards. But if you go to the Holy Sepulchre, you can walk right in. And granted, it'll be crowded, but you can literally just walk right in. There is no security. I think we need to be smart now. Cunning as serpents, innocent as doves. Let's make sure that there is protection. I know some churches actually hire off-duty police officers just to be there for the Mass. And just their presence alone can deter many problems. You know, there have been times when people, I remember one time when as a young seminarian, I had to actually put a stop to something because some woman walked, the tabernacle was in a side chapel, not the nicest place for the tabernacle to be. It wasn't an attractive church, I'm just going to say it. But anyway, the tabernacle was more exposed. It wasn't in the sanctuary behind the altar as the centerpiece, but was off to the side. And there was a woman who walked right up, right before Mass. She opened up the tabernacle and she goes like this. She looked like she was doing something. Maybe, who knows, she could have been putting chemicals on the Eucharist. Who knows? I remember I put a stop to that. And what did we have to do? We had to properly dispose the Eucharist, soaking it in water and then returning it to the earth because we had no idea what she did to it. No one stopped her. This is crazy. And this stuff, unfortunately, happens in churches. So I think not only should there be security cameras, and also just maybe some sort of deterrent, a security guard that is part of the staff that you can just have there. And let's also make sure that even our altar servers are aware to pay attention. And, you know, it's not a bad idea to have very dedicated men and very capable women to sit in the front pew, just in case anything like this happens where you see someone approaching the sanctuary that shouldn't be approaching it. Someone can intervene quickly. But I also have to admit, like, I'm a martial artist. I'm not like the strongest person in the world, and I'm certainly not as fast and agile as I used to be, but I train enough to know that out of reflex, I might defend myself. I mean, this bishop held up a cross. I might like sidestep and throw a punch. Would I be liable? Would that be self-defense? If I see someone approaching the sanctuary to me, how would I react? I don't know. But I would hope that the members of the church will also be smarter about things and make sure that it doesn't come to that. And I also hope that I would have enough faith that before I throw a punch or a move that defends myself, that I would make the sign of the cross or hold up the cross, because that truly is my only true saving grace. There is a lot to think about in this world. We are truly being challenged, and I certainly hope that this episode wakes us all up. Please make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and comment, and please support us on Patreon so that we can provide you more information and give you also some pretty great perks. Thank you for watching. We're going to pray for all of the victims that have suffered tremendously in Australia these past few days, and in a special way, pray for this bishop and anyone else who was harmed, and conversion for his attacker. God bless you. Stay hungry for God.